What I'm going to talk to you about today is how to start creating your gargoyle's head and body. So let's first go over the supplies that you're going to need. Everybody's going to be working on a clay mat, which is what you see right down here. And then everybody also needs a clay container. This will keep your workable clay. And you need to take a piece of masking tape and a Sharpie and write your name, period, and quarter on the tape. That way, when these projects are first starting out and they all look very similar, you will be able to tell which one is yours. You'll get a chunk of clay that is about this size. This is just to get you started. You will get more clay as you need it. You just have to let me know. You are also going to need a yogurt cup with a small amount of water. You can see there's not a lot of water in there. If you fill it all the way up to the top, it's very likely that it could spill while you are working, and you won't need very much water to connect your pieces anyway. You're also going to need a large carving tool. It looks like this. There are small carving tools as well, so make sure that you have one of the large ones. You are going to need a fork. You are going to need what I call a pink tool. It's just a pink plastic handle with a little needle on the end. And then an X-Acto knife. Now you don't need the X-Acto knife too often, so you are welcome to share your X-Acto knife with somebody else at your table. Now to get us started, I'm going to set all these things aside, and I'm going to get my chunk of clay. Depending on how big I want my gargoyle's body to be, I am going to take off a small piece of it, or again, however much you think you need to leave to create your gargoyle's body. And it is up to you how big or small your gargoyle's body is. This is going to get set aside in my clay container. Clay container, of course, helps our clay stay nice and soft so that it doesn't dry out. First thing I'm going to do with this is just get it into a nice rectangular shape by gently just kind of tapping it onto my mat. You can also use your hands to get it into shape, but you do want to make sure that you are gentle with your clay as you work with it. If you're too rough with it, it's not going to cooperate. It's not going to be the shape that you're trying to make it. It's just going to start to squish into other shapes that you probably don't want. Now that I've got it in kind of a rectangular shape, or a cube shape, I'm going to start to round out these corners, because what we're trying to do is make the cone shape for your gargoyle's body. So I'm going to put it on one of the corners, just going to rock it back and forth to round it out. Notice I'm not going very quickly, putting a bit of pressure down on it, but not so much that I'm smushing it. All right. So now that I've got it kind of rounded, I can start doing full rolls so that I can really start to make it look like that cone shape. And again, not rolling too quickly, taking my time, putting even pressure down. And then every so often, I'm going to stop and gently just flatten the top and the bottom, just to kind of help keep those flat. And you can also round off the edges with your hands, just kind of like this. And then we'll continue to roll. All right, let's go back and flatten that top and bottom. Now that I've got it to this point, I want to decide which is going to be the top of the cone and which is going to be the bottom. It already kind of looks like it's starting to get a little thinner over on this side. So I'm going to concentrate my pressure as I roll it just over on this side. Okay. And again, we can shape it with our hands. Gently flatten the top and the bottom. Smooth it with your hands a little bit. And let's just roll it a little bit more. Be really gentle when you roll it. That also just help keep the outside nice and even and smooth. But you do have to be gentle. If you start seeing indentations from your fingerprints, you know that you are pressing too hard. All right, well, now that I've got it like this, I think this looks like it's a good size, I can start to hollow out my gargoyle's body. Now this is the top, this is where we're going to set the head, so I want to actually start hollowing it out from the bottom. To do that, I'm going to take my pink tool, and what we're going to use this for is kind of like a pencil where I'm just marking the clay to give myself a guideline. Okay, and it's right in the middle there. And what I want to do is make sure that I have a pretty even thickness all the way around the edge here. This is what's going to get scooped out in the middle. I have to make sure I don't remove too much clay from the middle of my gargoyle's body, because if this gets too thin, then it will not be able to support all of the different features that I'm going to be eventually attaching. So I'm going to take my carving tool and I'm going to work with the end that, the end that has a little bit of a curve to it. And I start out by just going down in that center section, kind of going around in a circle so that I can scoop some clay out of the inside there. I'll go ahead and set that to the side. And another scoop. Now as I'm scooping the clay out of the center, I'm going down. I'm not really taking much away from the side here. I'm just trying to get all the way through that center section of the gargoyle. Okay, there's another scoop. Okay, let's take a look. Now that I've gotten it about this far through, I would say that that's a little bit more than halfway through. I don't really need to carve anymore. What I'm going to do now is take my carving tool, there we go, and I'm just going to make sure I've got it centered there, right in the middle, and I'm going to just start to twist. And you can see that it popped out on the other side. I'm going to give it a little wiggle just to open up that hole. And now it's hollow all the way through. Once I've done that, I'm not quite done with my gargoyle's body just yet, because I need to make sure that I redistribute that clay that's on the inside. So I'm going to do that just by taking, I normally just use my pointer finger, and I just kind of run my finger down the inside wall of the clay on the inside. Sometimes I do it kind of in a rounded motion like this. And what that helps do is spread it out on the inside so that I don't have some parts where the clay is super thick and then other parts where the clay is a little bit thinner. I'm trying to make that thickness as even as possible. Now in doing all of this and handling the clay, carving out the middle, I've kind of made some marks on the outside, so I'm gonna step back, just try and even things out a little bit again. I'm gonna roll it really, really gently just to help smooth out the outside. If I press too hard, I'm gonna collapse my gargoyle's body because it is hollow on the inside now. All right. Smooth all this out. There we go. This does take a minute, so if you're not spending 5 or so minutes smoothing the inside, you probably didn't get it that smooth. And I'm going to roll it really gently again, just to keep the outside nice and smooth. And then gently tap it on the top and the bottom, just to keep those nice and flat. Just a little bit more smoothing down here. All right. So now I get to think about what I want the head to look like. So that means I'm going to set this aside for a moment. And I'm going to go back to my clay container. And I'm going to pull out a chunk that I think is probably going to be a good size for my gargoyle's head. It's kind of up to you how big or small your gargoyle's head is. You probably want it to look like it's in proportion to your gargoyle's body. But if you want the head to be slightly oversized or slightly undersized, that is totally up to you. So I'm going to start off just by kind of rounding this out. Let's get our lid back on there. Just going to smooth out any little lumps and bumps and breaks in the clay where I smushed a bunch of pieces together. Okay, and then we'll start to kind of roll it between my hands here. Now your head can be whatever shape you'd like it to be. If you are doing a gargoyle that has a little bit more of a snout to it, I recommend doing kind of an egg shape. You could also make your gargoyle just have a nice round head. You could have your gargoyle, it could have sort of like a square shaped head, a rectangular shaped head. That is up to you. It is important to get your gargoyle's head fairly smooth at this point. It's going to be a lot easier to smooth it out before it's attached to the body, although you will need to continue to do smoothing work throughout the project. All right, now from here, I'm going to set this on my gargoyle's body. We're going to see if you like the way it looks. I think it looks pretty good. All right, well, I need to attach these two things together. So that means I need to score it first off, which is kind of a fancy art word for scratching. Okay, and then after that, we're going to use a little bit of water to help glue the two pieces together, and that's sometimes called slipping. So really making sure I've scratched up the surface of my gargoyle at the top where I'm attaching the head, and then I'm going to scratch the very bottom of my gargoyle's head right where I'm attaching it. Now normally when I score pieces of clay, you can see that I'm using the fork. It's an easy thing to score with. I go one direction and then I cross back over in the other direction. That way I know I've done enough scratching. All right, so there we go. Just a little bit of water. You can see I've got my cup of water here. I'm just going to use a fingertip just to get the two surfaces kind of wet. It doesn't need to be overly wet because then your clay can start to get kind of slimy on you. Just enough to get the two pieces kind of glued together. All right. Let's go ahead and set this back down. And now I get to blend. So I'm probably going to do a combination of blending the neck up into the head or the head down into the neck, whichever seems like it's going to work best. I'm going to start off by blending the body up into the head. Now if I do need to work at this with my gargoyle at an angle, I'm going to make sure that I'm picking it up, that I'm not angling it with it sitting down on the mat, because what you'll do is you'll press a flat spot on the bottom of your gargoyle, and that does not look so great. So we're going to go all the way around so we have it well connected. Okay. You do not want to see the line where the two pieces were initially separated from each other. You want to make it look like it's one full piece. All right. And the very last step that we're going to do here is open up the mouth and then hollow in through the mouth down into the body. So what I'm going to do that is take my pink tool, because remember I used this to draw guidelines, and I want to make sure, I'm going to look at my gargoyle head on and start to make a line that is exactly halfway down. Okay? Now I've got it in the right spot, but that's too short of a line. I need to continue the line, okay, back a little bit further on the sides so that I can actually open up the gargoyle's mouth wide enough to hollow down into the body. Oops, can you see that? Okay, to make the cut, I'm going to use my X-Acto knife, and I'm going to have to make a few cuts. So we're going to do our first initial cut right along that guideline. Okay, and open. And then I need to do another cut. And open. Sorry, I turned it around so you couldn't see it. Okay, now that I have the mouth open, I need to be able to go all the way into the mouth, down into the hollow part of the body. Now the easiest way I think to do this is just to take your finger and gently kind of press back into the mouth. You do have to kind of do it gently until you feel your finger break through down into the hollow portion of your gargoyle's body. Now that might mess up the mouth a little bit, so you'll have to go back and do some smoothing work and sort of reshaping work inside the mouth, and that's really important that you make sure that you do that. Right, now I'm not nearly done with my smoothing and shaping, but I am finished with this portion of the demonstration. There will be more demonstrations to come on the different parts or features you can add to your gargoyle.